The year is 1671. The air over the Brahmaputra River hangs heavy with the stifling humidity of the monsoon, a thick, wet heat that rots leather and rusts iron. In the darkness, the silence of the river valley is deceptive, hiding a labyrinth of bamboo spikes, mud banks, and thousands of silent men waiting in the reeds. This is the edge of the known world for the invading Mughal Empire, a place they call a black hole, a graveyard for armies. On the water, a massive fleet of imperial warships looms, carrying the finest artillery and cavalry of Aurangzeb, the most powerful emperor on earth. Opposing them is not a king, but a single man lying on a cot, his body burning with a fever so severe he can barely stand. Yet, his name alone is enough to hold the line. He is Lachit Borphukan, and he has already proven that in this jungle, blood holds no value compared to the soil. To understand the sheer brutality of this standoff, one must look back to a single, chilling night during the preparations for this siege. The Ahom kingdom, a small, defiant power in what is now northeast India, was racing against time to erect a defensive rampart made of mud and bamboo to funnel the enemy into a kill zone. Lachit had entrusted the supervision of this critical fortification to his own maternal uncle. When the general arrived under the cover of darkness to inspect the progress, he found the workers sleeping in the wall unfinished, a fatal gap in their armor. There was no trial. There was no hesitation. In front of the terrified laborers, Lachit drew his hungdong, a heavy Ahom sword, and severed his uncle's head with a single stroke. As the blood soaked into the wet earth, he delivered a line that would echo through centuries of history: "My uncle is not greater than my country." This was not a man fighting for glory, this was a man fighting for survival, operating under a code of discipline so absolute that it bordered on the inhuman. The Mughals, led by the Rajput general Ram Singh, had arrived with the arrogance of an empire that had crushed everything from the Afghan mountains to the Deccan Plateau. They brought with them 30,000 infantry, heavy cavalry, and a massive naval fleet, expecting to steamroll the barbarians of the east. But they found themselves fighting a war they did not understand. Lachit refused to meet them in the open fields where their horses could charge. Instead, he dragged them into a nightmare of environmental warfare. He used the geography of Assam as a weapon, employing a tactic known as Daga Judak guerrilla warfare. The Ahom soldiers were ghosts, striking at night, cutting supply lines, and vanishing into the dense foliage. They used the monsoon rains to bog down the heavy Mughal cannons in the mud, turning the invaders' technological superiority into a logistical curse. However, the path to the final confrontation was paved with disaster. 2 years prior, at the Battle of Alaboy, the Ahom forces had made the mistake of engaging the Mughals on open ground. The result was a massacre. 10,000 Ahom soldiers were slaughtered in a single day, their bodies scattered across the plains by the Mughal cavalry. Lachit had watched the carnage, helpless to stop it. That defeat could have broken him. Instead, it hardened him. He realized that to defeat a giant, he had to lure it into the water. He retreated to Guwahati, turning the narrow stretch of the Brahmaputra River, flanked by the Kamakya Hills on one side and the Aswaklanta Cliffs on the other, into a watery choke point. He knew Ram Singh would become impatient. He knew the Mughals would try to force their way through the river triangle to capture the capital. The climax arrived in March 1671 at Saraighat. The Mughal fleet, massive and imposing, began its advance, confident that the Ahom army was demoralized and their commander dying. They were partially right. Lachit was bedridden, his body ravaged by illness. Seeing the armada approach, the Ahom navy began to waver. Boatmen looked for escape routes, morale was collapsing. It was the moment the empire had waited for. But then, the impossible happened. From the banks, the sick general ordered his attendants to carry him onto a warboat. He did not ask to be evacuated. He asked to be rowed straight into the teeth of the enemy fleet. Lying on his cot on the deck, shouting orders through the fever, he screamed that if his men wanted to flee, they could tell the king that their general had died alone. The sight of their dying commander charging the enemy fleet shattered the panic. Shame turned into a berserker fury. The Ahom navy, comprised of small, agile boats called bakharas, swarmed the lumbering Mughal warships like a pack of wolves attacking a buffalo. They used the currents to their advantage, outmaneuvering the heavy vessels that struggled to turn in the narrow river. It was chaotic, close-quarters violence. Ahom soldiers boarded the enemy ships, engaging in hand-to-hand combat, while indigenous cannons and arrows rained down from the banks. The river triangle became a cauldron of death. The Mughal admiral was killed, his head cut off, and the seemingly invincible imperial fleet was thrown into disarray, their ships crashing into one another as they tried to retreat against the current. Ram Singh, watching the annihilation of his forces from the shore, was forced to admit a begrudging admiration for the enemy he could not crush. He wrote that every stone, every tree, and every river current in this land seemed to fight for the Ahoms. The Mughals retreated, their dreams of eastern expansion buried in the mud of the Brahmaputra. Lachit Borphukan did not live long to savor the victory. The illness he ignored to lead the charge claimed his life soon after. He left behind no dynasty, only a border that remained inviolate and a chilling reminder of the price of sovereignty, a legacy carved by a sword that knew no difference between an enemy and a negligent kin. The river flows on, indifferent and calm, hiding the bones of an empire that drowned trying to cross it.